pretty, for Rishi Sunak, that's quite strong stuff.
Yeah, that was a very combative response from the Prime Minister. By Rishi Sunak standards, as you say, that was as close as you can to telling Boris Johnson to get lost in a fusillade of unprintable language. He effectively accused Boris Johnson of asking him to break the rules and essentially, as in a sign of strength, really, said to his allies, if you don't like it, you can get lost.
We've already got Boris Johnson's allies now all sitting in the House of Lords, of course, have been already briefing again against Rishi Sunak. Clearly, can we try and unpack what actually happened against the sort of the spin and bluster for both sides?
Yeah, well, the issue is that not enough of his allies for Boris Johnson are in the House of Lords yet, and this is what this all comes down to. And the latest falling out, and a series of many, many falling outs between the two of them over the years, which is coming to another head today, really, dates back just over a week to a meeting between Sunak and Johnson, which Sunak was insistent that he had made no promises to Boris Johnson, said, look, the House of Lords Appointments Commission is an independent process. I am not going to interfere with that. They will do their work and I will wade through whatever list they put to me. Boris Johnson's account of it is Sunak promised him that he would wade through whatever list Johnson put to him. So it is a very different account. He also thought that Sunak should have, and perhaps did, promise, OK, if his allies weren't on this peerage list, maybe they'd be on another one in the future. Sunak, as you just heard, said, no, I don't make that kind of promises. Now, not many people in this meeting. We don't know which side to believe, but people will make their own decisions on whether they think Boris Johnson's account or Rishi Sunak's account is more plausible. And it is noticeable today that quite a lot of Tory MPs are deciding it is Sunak that they believe. There is a sense that they are perhaps a little bit tired now of all this Boris Johnson psychodrama.
Is it possible, now call me cynical, Chris, is it possible that Boris Johnson knows full well what Rishi Sunak said to him, but he's had Nadine Dorries and Nigel Adams on the phone kicking off, and actually it's much better to blame Rishi Sunak rather than admit, I know I told you I'd twist his arm and he'd give them to you, but I didn't persuade him?
I mean, the idea that Boris Johnson may say one thing to one group of people and another thing to another, I mean, perish the thought. But of course, that is, another thing that's going to get him into trouble today when the Privileges Committee eventually meet and effectively accuse him of that. So, Boris Johnson, for his many strengths, the criticism has always been his sort of loose relationship with the truth. And finally, yet again, these seem to be what has driven him out not only of Downing Street, but of Parliament as well.
You mentioned the Privileges Committee. Obviously, that was the reason that he decided to quit on Friday, calling it a witch hunt and a kangaroo court. But the kangaroo court is still sitting. It still seems to be seeing out the process, regardless of whether or not he's still an MP.
Yes, there is a slight sort of procedural question of is he still going to be an MP when they publish it? He said he resigned. He hasn't actually resigned yet. Will he resign today? We're not sure. But if he is still an MP, they can recommend a sanction, even if that ends up being superseded by his resignation. If he's not, they may just publish their findings, which it sounds like they're going to be pretty damning, and find that he did recklessly and deliberately mislead Parliament.
But does it mean anything then if he isn't an MP?
In purely political terms, no. I think that the battle lines of that are set. The committee, which is, don't forget, has a majority of Tory MPs, has clearly reached a very, very clear conclusion, and Boris Johnson has equally clearly rejected that conclusion. That essentially is a political battle. I mean, the formal process now is kind of moot, given that he has said he is going to stand down, but he also said, for now. So it does matter in terms of his future prospects of a comeback, exactly how damning that report is and what evidence they have amassed. Because don't forget, we have seen Boris Johnson's evidence, but we've not seen the full evidence given by other people in government at the time to the committee. And that we will see finally what other people said about what Boris Johnson told the Commons.
The other battle that Boris Johnson's embroiled in is with the COVID inquiry and the mobile phone he keeps in his drawer but can't turn on because it will just explode with messages. The COVID inquiry gets underway tomorrow. That's probably what we will be talking about. It's a sort of big political moment of the week, were it not for all of the other political dramas. What is the latest on his WhatsApps and his notebooks and what exactly it is that the inquiry has got hold of?
Yes, so Rishi Sunak's government has a clear position that it doesn't want to hand over everything it has totally unredacted to the COVID inquiry. It thinks the inquiry doesn't need that much and that it would be exposing sort of personal information to people who didn't need to see it. Boris Johnson, in another example of perhaps he would say being very helpful to the cause of open government. Rishi Sunak would say deliberately causing trouble. Has said, I'm totally happy to hand over anything I've got to the inquiry. But two things we're not sure if he has got. One is this old phone, which the security services don't want him to turn on because it seems to be so thoroughly compromised. Some debate about whether he has in fact turned it on more recently. But that contains all of his messages going up to May 2021, which is obviously the crucial period here. So that will be of great interest to the inquiry if they can get hold of that. And the other is his notebooks from his time in Downing Street. Now, we didn't know until this process began that he had been keeping what amounted to a diary, and the Cabinet Office has effectively impounded that, saying, no, you can't have it because we don't want you handing the whole thing over to the inquiry. It sounds like he's been fairly candid and frank in what he's written down there, so that would, again, be pretty interesting to see.